Efe was a young woman with big dreams. At 24, she was focused on building a career and living a simple but happy life. Love wasn't a priority, at least not until she met Daniel. Daniel was everything a woman would ask for: charming, confident, and successful. He had the kind of presence that turned heads whenever he walked into a room. The moment he laid eyes on Efe, he made it his mission to have her. At first, everything felt perfect. Daniel showered her with attention, affection, and extravagant gifts, expensive handbags, surprise flowers delivery, candlelit dinner at 5-star restaurants. He planned luxurious weekends getaway and constantly reminded her how lucky he was to have her. Efe felt like she was living in a fairy tale, but the signs were there, small, almost unnoticeable at first. Daniel didn't like it when she spent time with her family and friends. "They don't understand us," he would often say. "They are just jealous because they don't know what we have." He constantly checked up on her, always wanting to know where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. "It's just because I cared so much about you," he would say. And when she expressed discomfort, it would make her feel guilty for questioning him. "Do you think I would ever hurt you after everything I've done for you?" Little by little, Daniel was isolating her. Then came the grand proposal: a rooftop dinner, a live band playing in the background, and an expensive diamond ring sparkling under the lights. It was the kind of proposal every woman dreamed of. As Daniel knelt in front of her, smiling confidently, Efe felt something strange in her chest, a small, quiet voice telling her something was wrong. But as she looked around at the cheering crowd, at the man who had given her everything, she ignored the voice. She said yes, and just like that, she became Daniel's fiancée. But if only she knew, the fairy tale was about to turn into a nightmare. At first, nothing seemed different. The excitement of her engagement consumed Efe. She spent her days showing off her ring, planning wedding details, and dreaming about her future with Daniel. But beneath the surface, things were changing. The man who once worshipped the ground she walked on now watched her with an unsettling intensity. It started small, so small that Efe didn't recognize the warning signs. Daniel began deciding what she should wear. One evening, she was getting ready for dinner when she stepped out in a fitted red dress. The moment Daniel saw her, his smile faded. "You're not wearing that." Efe blinked. "Why? What's wrong with it?" He walked up to her, running his finger down her arm, his voice calm but firm. "You are mine, Efe. I don't want other men staring at what belongs to me." Something about the way he said it sent a chill down her spine. "It's just a dress," she said, trying to laugh it off. His grip on her wrist tightened. "Go get change," he ordered. And she did, because it was easier than arguing. At first, she thought it was sweet. He just loves me so much. But soon, his love started to feel like a cage. Daniel hated when Efe spent time with her friends and family. Whenever she told him she was going out, his face will always darken. "Why do you need to see them all the time?" he asked one evening as she was getting ready for a lunch date with her cousin. "Because they are my family." Efe laughed, but Daniel's expression didn't change. "I'm your family now. I'm the only one who cares about you." That day, during lunch, her cousin Amaka noticed how distracted she was. "Efe, what's wrong now?" she asked. But her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with Daniel's calls. He called her over and over and over. She sighed and finally picked up. "Where are you? Why have you to be picking my calls?" "I told you I'm with Amaka." "How long have you been there? Who else is there with you?" "Daniel, can you relax? I will see you soon." And she hung up quickly, feeling a mix of guilt and frustration. Amaka raised an eyebrow. "Efe, why is he calling you like that? This doesn't seem normal." Efe forced a smile. "He just worried about me," she said. But deep down, she knew something was off. The first real sign that something was terribly wrong came one evening. Efe had mentioned meeting up with an old school friend that could help with her career, a guy she had known for years. Daniel's face immediately changed. Why do you need to see him? He asked, his voice calm, too calm. He's just a friend that offers to help. Efe said, confused. His jaw tightened. His breathing slowed. Then, without warning, Daniel grabbed the glass in his hand and smashed it against the wall. The sound of his shattering echoed through the apartment. Efe's heart stopped. She stared at the broken pieces on the floor, her hands trembling. Then, as if nothing happened, Daniel sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry, baby, he whispered. I just love you so much. I can't stand the thought of losing you. His voice broke. He cried. And Efe forgave him, thinking that was the first time, not knowing it wouldn't be the last. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's anger became unpredictable. One evening, Efe was watching a movie when she laughed at a scream on her phone. Daniel, sitting next to her, suddenly snatched the phone off her hand. What's so funny? Daniel, what are you doing? She asked, trying to take her phone back. Are you talking to another man? What? No, it's just a video. His grip on the phone tightened. Don't lie to me, Efe. Her stomach twisted. Was this really the same man who used to bring her flowers for no reason? The same man who once said he would do anything to make her happy? That night, she barely slept. Something wasn't right. One day, Daniel showed up at Efe's workplace unannounced. I'm taking you to lunch, he said with a smile. Daniel, I have to work. Just for an hour, he pressed. Efe sighed and followed him. At the restaurant, she glanced at her phone checking the time. Daniel frowned. Why are you texting? No one. I'm just checking the time. I don't want to be away from work for too long. He grabbed her phone and scrolled through her messages. Daniel, give me my phone. He smirked, sliding it back across the table. I was just checking. I don't want any secrets between us. Efe's heart pounded. This was not normal. Her best friend Tola had been watching closely. Efe, are you okay? She asked one evening as they sat in her apartment. Of course, why won't I be? Tola folded her arms. Because you've changed. You don't come out anymore. You look tired all the time. And Daniel, he calls you every 5 minutes as if he owns you. Efe sighed. It's just that he loves me a little too much, Tola. Tola leaned in. Efe, love is not control. Love doesn't make you afraid. For the first time, Efe really thought about that. Because the truth was, she was afraid. She was afraid of what would happen if she ever said no to Daniel. And that night, as she lay in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge in months crept in. Doubt. The man she once adored. The man she had promised to spend the rest of her life with. Did she really know him at all? She couldn't sleep all night. She tossed and turned, her mind restless, drowning in thoughts she couldn't shake off. For months, she had ignored the strange feeling in her guts, dismissed the red flags, convinced herself that Daniel was just a man who loved too deeply. But now, the doubt was creeping in, and it refused to leave. The next morning, as if guided by fate, she decided to go to Daniel's place. Maybe seeing him, being in his space, would help her clear her head. When she arrived, the first thing she noticed was that his car wasn't in the driveway. It was out. She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out her spare key. Daniel had given it to her months ago, telling her that his home was hers too. She had never really used it, but today was different. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The house was a mess, papers scattered across the table, a half-drunk cup of coffee on the counter, and a jacket carelessly thrown over the couch. It looked like he had rushed out in a hurry. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Daniel was always so neat. Everything in his house was perfectly arranged, controlled, just like he was. This was out of his character. She sighed and dropped her bag. Maybe she should tidy up a little before he got back. She picked up his jacket, folded it neatly, then moved towards the kitchen to clear the counter. That's when her eyes landed on something unexpected. The door to his study was opened. That was odd. Daniel never left his study opened, ever. Slowly she walked towards it. Inside, everything looked as it always did, organized, untouched. But one thing stood out, his computer. The screen was on. Efe frowned. Daniel never left his laptop unattended. He was extremely private about his work, always shutting it down or locking it whenever she was around. But today, it was open. She stepped closer. Her eyes landed on a folder on the screen, labeled Personal. Something in her told her to walk away, to leave it alone. But another part of her, the part that had spent months ignoring the uneasy feeling in her chest, told her that this moment was happening for a reason. Slowly, she moved the mouse. She clicked. A list of files appeared. Images, documents, screenshots, and then WhatsApp chats. Her stomach twisted. Her heart pounded loudly in her ears as she clicked on one. A conversation popped up. It was between Daniel and another woman. Her eyes scanned the messages. At first, it looked normal, flirty, romantic. Then as she scrolled further, the tone shifted. I told you not to leave the house without asking me. You think you can live without me? You belong to me. You will learn to obey me one way or the other. Her hand trembled. She clicked on another chat. Different woman, same pattern. Daniel lured them in with charm, showering them with love, then turned into something else, something dark. Her throat tightened as she kept scrolling through chat after chat, each one worse than the last. And then she saw a name that made her blood run cold. Chiamaka, Daniel's ex-girlfriend, woman who had mysteriously disappeared. Efe's fingers trembled as she clicked on the chat. The last few messages sent from Chiamaka made her entire body freeze. Daniel, please don't do this to me. I haven't eaten in days. Please just give me water. I swear I won't tell anyone. Just let me go. Efe stared at the screen in horror. This wasn't a normal breakup. Daniel had done something to her. Her mind screamed at her to close the folder, to get out of there. But just as she moved the cursor, she saw another file, labeled security footage. A fresh wave of panic washed over her. She hesitated. Then, almost against her will, she clicked it. The screen flickered, and the footage played. A dimly lit room. At first, it looked empty. Then movement. A woman sat on the cold floor, her body frail, her clothes dirty and torn. Efe's entire body went rigid. Chiamaka, she was alive. Her eyes were hollow, filled with pure terror. She looked straight into the camera, her lips trembling. Daniel, I know you are watching. Please set me free. I promise not to tell anyone about this. Just let me go. Desperately. Efe clamped the hand over her mouth. This wasn't an old video. The footage was still recording. Daniel had locked her up somewhere, and he was watching her suffer. A strangled sob escaped her lips. She backed away from the decks, her breath coming in short gaps. She had to get out. She had to tell someone. Her hands fumbled for her phone. She needed to take pictures to save them as evidence. But before she could, the screen suddenly went blank. The laptop shut down. A slow shiver crept up her spine, and then a shadow fell over her. Her breath stopped. Slowly she turned around. Daniel was standing in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was eerily calm. You shouldn't have seen that, Efe. Efe's heart stopped. Her breath came in short, shallow gaps. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. She needed to stay calm. If she panicked, if she made any sudden moves, he would know. He would know she was afraid, and fear was exactly what he wanted. Swallowing hard, she forced a nervous laugh. Daniel, she started, searching for the right words. His head tilted slightly, watching her, studying her. You look tense, my love. he said softly. Why are you shaking? Efe clenched her fists to keep them from trembling. I was just surprised, she said, forcing a smile. I didn't mean to go through your things. I was just tidying up. I know you don't like your space dirty. Silence. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly, Daniel smiled. But it wasn't his usual smile. This one sent a chill down her spine. You know, Efe, he said, stepping closer. Most women don't get past this stage. But you are special. Her stomach twisted. Most women, she fought the urge to take a step back. If she showed fear, she was dead. Daniel reached for the laptop and closed it gently. Now, he said, his voice calm, let's sit and talk. He gestured towards the chair, but Efe knew if she sat down, she wouldn't get back up. She forced another laugh, shaking her head. Daniel, I actually have to be somewhere. She tried to keep her tone light. Can we talk later? I'll call you. His smile didn't fade, but his eyes darkened. Efe, sit. Her chest tightened. She glanced at her phone on the desk. If she could grab it. Before she could react, Daniel lunged. She barely dodged in this time. His fingers grazed her waist as she yanked her hand back, grabbing the first thing she could, a heavy glass paperweight. Without thinking, she swung. The glass smashed against his head. Daniel stumbled back, groaning in pain. Efe ran. She didn't think. She didn't look back. She just ran. She sprinted towards the door, fumbling with the lock. Click! It opened. She yanked open the door and bolted. Her car was parked in the driveway. She reached it, threw the door open, jumped in, and locked it. Daniel slammed his fist against the window. Efe, don't you dare leave! But she was already shifting into reverse. Her tires creaked as she sped backward, barely missing him. Then she shifted into drive, and she was gone. Tears blurred her vision as she drove, hands gripping the wheel so tightly that they hurt. Her mind raced. She needed to go to the police. She needed to warn someone. Chiamaka was still alive. She had to stop him. But one thought kept ringing in her head as she sped down the road. She had almost become the next missing woman. Efe didn't stop driving. Her hands trembled on the wheel. Her mind racing as she struggled to process everything. Daniel was a monster. He had locked Chiamaka away. She was still alive, starving, begging for her life. And if Efe hadn't found out, she would have been next. Her phone rang. She jumped. Tola, she answered immediately. Efe, what's wrong? I've been calling you. Her breath came in short gaps. Tola, I need help. I need to go to the police. Tola's voice sharpened. Efe, where are you? Are you safe? I don't know. Just meet me at the station. She couldn't go home. Daniel knew where she lived. She needed to be somewhere safe. She needed to end this. The moment she burst through the station's door, the officers turned to look at her. She must have looked insane. Her hair messy, face pale, and her hands still shaking. Please, she gasped. You have to help me. She told them everything. About the WhatsApp chats, about the CCTV footage, about Chiamaka still locked up somewhere. At first, she could see doubts in the officer's eyes. Then she handed them her phone. She had managed to take screenshots of the messages. The evidence was there. One of the officers nodded. We need to move now. That night, the police raided Daniel's house. Efe watched from a distance, her heart pounding. Moments later, 2 officers emerged the house, carrying someone, a frail woman, weak, barely able to stand. Chiamaka. Tears filled Efe's eyes. She was alive. Paramedics rushed forward, covering her in a blanket. She looked around, confused and dazed, before her eyes locked onto Efe. For a moment, she just stared. Then her lips trembled. Thank you, she whispered. Efe wiped away her own tears. It was over. Daniel had been caught. Days later, Efe sat in her apartment watching the news. Daniel's face filled the screen. Efe let out a slow, shaky breath. It was finally over. Daniel had been arrested, and today he had been sentenced. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tola. "You are watching the news, right? It's done. He is gone for good." Efe stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the screen. Then the news anchor's voice echoed in the background. Daniel Okaru, the wealthy businessman accused of multiple kidnappings, had been sentenced to life imprisonment. But as Efe typed her response, a chill crept down her spine. She should feel safe, relieved. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't really over. That somehow, somewhere, Daniel was still watching. Because men like him, they never let go. What would you do if the person you love turned out to be your worst nightmare? How many red flags do we ignore before it's too late? Trust your instincts. Pay attention to signs. And remember, some monsters don't hide in the dark. They smile right at you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping life-inspired tales. Turn on notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching Naija Life Stories, bringing life to every tales. Bye.